The Greyhound bus squealed to a stop at the Miami bus station at 5:43 in the morning on a gray Tuesday in March. Carmen Morales held tight to her 7-year-old daughter Isabella's hand and looked through the fogged window at a city that represented both their last hope and their greatest fear. "Mommy, are we here?" Isabella asked sleepily, rubbing her eyes with her worn cloth doll, the only valuable thing they had managed to bring from Phoenix. "Yes, mi amor." "We've arrived at our new home," Carmen responded, trying to inject optimism into a voice broken by 3 days of travel and 6 months of nightmares. They had exactly $147, 2 small suitcases of clothes, and nowhere to stay. Carmen had chosen Miami because it was far enough from the ex-husband who had destroyed her financially and emotionally, and because she had heard there was work for those willing to do anything. And Carmen was willing to do anything. 6 months ago, her life had been completely different. She worked as an executive secretary at a law firm in Phoenix, earned a decent salary, lived in a suburban house with a garden where Isabella played after school. They were a normal middle-class family, or so she thought, until she discovered that her husband Roberto had lost everything gambling. Not just their savings, not just the house, everything. He had secretly refinanced the house 3 times, taken loans using her name without her knowledge, and accumulated a debt of $180,000 with loan sharks who had no patience for explanations. "Carmen, they're going to kill us if we don't pay," Roberto had confessed on a terrible September night after she found threatening men at their front door. "I screwed up everything. I lost everything. And now they want the money or what? Or they'll take Isabella as collateral." That was the night Carmen's world imploded. In 48 hours, she had filed for divorce, withdrawn the last $300 from their blocked accounts, packed what little fit in 2 suitcases, and bought 2 one-way tickets to the farthest place her money would allow. Now sitting on the hard bench of the Miami bus station, watching Isabella sleep against her shoulder, Carmen wondered if she had made the right decision. They were 2 Latina women without connections, without resources, without a plan. In Phoenix, at least she knew the city, had professional contacts, spoke the language fluently. Here, she was just another desperate immigrant in a city full of them. "Mommy, I'm hungry," Isabella murmured. Carmen checked her wallet. $147 had to last until she found work, and she had no idea how long that would take. "Let's look for a place to have breakfast, princess." They walked through Miami's streets carrying their suitcases, Carmen trying not to show the panic growing in her chest with each block. The city was more expensive than she had imagined. The cheapest hotels they found cost $50 a night, money she didn't have. Finally, they found a small Cuban cafe where they got café con leche and toast for $6. While Isabella ate slowly, Carmen leafed through a local newspaper abandoned at the next table, looking for jobs. Most required experience she didn't have, qualifications she didn't possess, or perfect English fluency. Carmen spoke English well, but with a pronounced accent she knew would limit her options. "Excuse me," she said timidly to the waitress, a middle-aged Cuban woman. "Do you know where I can look for work? Any work?" The waitress, who was called Rosa, studied Carmen with compassionate but tired eyes. "You just arrived, didn't you?" "Yes, from Phoenix." "Running away?" Carmen hesitated, then nodded. "We all run from something," Rosa said gently. "Do you have somewhere to stay?" "Not yet," Rosa sighed. "Mija, you're in a difficult situation. Miami is expensive, and work for women like us, well, it's not easy. I'll do anything. Clean, cook, take care of children, anything." "Do you have a car?" "No." "Documents?" "Yes, I'm an American citizen." "That helps." Rosa took a napkin and wrote an address. "Go to this place. It's a cleaning agency. They always need people. It doesn't pay much, but it's honest work." "Thank you," Carmen said, tears of gratitude forming in her eyes. "And for sleeping tonight," Rosa continued. "There's a shelter for women and children on Northwest 7th Street. It's not luxury, but it's safe." Carmen held Rosa's hand. "Why are you helping me?" "Because 15 years ago, I was sitting in this same cafe with my two daughters in exactly your situation. Someone helped me. Now I help when I can." 2 hours later, Carmen was in the dirty office of Sunshine Cleaning Services, a company that provided cleaning services for hotels, offices, and residences throughout Miami. The manager, a 50-year-old American man named Bob Martinez, barely looked at her when Rosa recommended her by phone. "You clean houses before?" he asked in English, loudly chewing gum. "Yes," Carmen lied. She had never cleaned professionally, but how many times had she cleaned her own house? How hard could it be? "You have a car? I'll get one," she lied again. "You can start tomorrow. 6 in the morning, $40 per house. You provide your own cleaning supplies and transportation. You can clean 3-4 houses a day if you're efficient." "I accept." "Great. And hey, don't disappoint me. I've had many girls who start and quit after a week." "This work is hard." Carmen nodded, trying to calculate mentally. If she could clean 3 houses a day, 5 days a week, she would earn $600 a week. It was less than half what she earned in Phoenix, but it would be enough to survive. That night at the women's shelter, Carmen lay next to Isabella on a narrow bunk bed, listening to the muffled sobs of other women who had hit rock bottom. "Mommy," Isabella whispered, "when will we have our own house again?" Carmen took a deep breath, trying not to cry. "Soon, mi amor. Mommy will work very hard, and soon we'll have our own little house. Do you promise?" "I promise." But while Isabella slept, Carmen stayed awake, terrified by what she had promised. How could she, a former executive secretary, manage to build a new life from scratch? How would she teach Isabella to have hope when she herself was losing faith? The next morning at 5:30, Carmen was in front of Sunshine Cleaning, having left Isabella at the shelter's free childcare program. She had bought basic cleaning supplies with $20, a quarter of her remaining money, and was ready for her first house. The first house was a mansion in Coral Gables, owned by a wealthy family who was traveling. Carmen looked at the house, bigger than anywhere she had ever lived, and felt a mixture of intimidation and determination. 3 hours later, she was exhausted. Her hands were red and cracked, her back ached, and she had accidentally broken a vase that probably cost more than her monthly salary. "Dios mío," she whispered, looking at the pieces on the floor. "So what have I done?" She managed to glue the vase with tape and position it so the crack wasn't visible, praying the owners wouldn't notice before she could figure out how to replace it. The second house was even worse. The owner, an arrogant businessman, criticized every aspect of her work. "You didn't clean the corners right," he complained, following her while she worked. "And the bathrooms aren't shining like they should." "Sorry, sir. I can redo—" "You better redo it. And next time, be more careful. I don't want to have to complain to Bob." Carmen redid the work, which took 2 more hours. At the end of the day, she had completed only 2 houses instead of the 3 planned, earning $80, from which she had to subtract $20 for cleaning supplies and $10 for public transportation, $50 net for a day of brutal work. That night, at the shelter, other women shared their own stories of struggle. Maria, a Honduran woman, worked 3 jobs to support 4 children. Ana, a 50-year-old Cuban, had lost everything when her husband abandoned her and was trying to start over. "The key," Maria said to Carmen, "is never give up. No matter how bad it gets, it can always get better if you keep trying." "And how did you endure the bad days?" Carmen asked. "Looking at my children and remembering they deserve a better life, and knowing God has a plan, even when I can't see what it is." In the following days, Carmen developed a brutal routine. She woke up at 5 in the morning, left Isabella at childcare, took 2 buses to get to work, cleaned houses for 10 to 12 hours, returned to the shelter exhausted, spent 2 hours with Isabella, and collapsed in bed. Her hands were constantly red and sore from the chemicals. Her back constantly ached from bending to clean. She lost 10 pounds in 2 weeks and was often so tired she could barely keep her eyes open. But gradually, she was getting better at the work. She learned more efficient techniques, which products worked best, how to deal with difficult clients. She managed to increase to 3 houses a day, then 4, After 3 weeks, she had saved $500, enough for the deposit on a small apartment she found in Hialeah, an immigrant neighborhood in suburban Miami. "Mommy, is it ours?" Isabella asked when they entered the one-bedroom apartment, barely furnished but clean. "It's ours, Princess," Carmen said, tears of relief streaming down her face. It was just a small and simple apartment, but it was theirs. For the first time in months, Isabella would have her own bed, her own table for homework, her own home. But the joy was brief. 3 days after moving in, Carmen received a call that would change everything. "Carmen Morales." The voice on the phone was formal, official. "Yes, this is Detective Rodriguez from Phoenix Police. I need to inform you that your ex-husband Roberto was found dead." Carmen's world stopped. "What?" "He was murdered by creditors. We want you to know that you and your daughter may still be in danger. These people have contacts in several cities, including Miami." Carmen felt her legs fail. She sat heavily in her apartment's only chair. "What does this mean for us?" "It means you should remain vigilant. Change addresses if possible. Don't use your real names if you can avoid it. And if you see anything suspicious, call immediately." After hanging up the phone, Carmen sat in silence for an hour, processing the news. Roberto was dead. The man who had been her husband, Isabella's father, the man who had destroyed their lives, had paid the final price for his choices. She should feel relief, after all. Now there was no chance of him finding them or causing more problems. But all she felt was deep emptiness and renewed fear. When Isabella returned from school that afternoon, Carmen had to make the most difficult decision of her life. "Isabella, I need to tell you about your father. Is he coming to visit us?" "No, mi amor. Your father died." Isabella processed this information with the somber seriousness of a child who had already seen too much trauma. "Was he a bad person?" she asked. Carmen chose her words carefully. "He made bad choices that hurt many people, but he loved you. And now it's just the two of us. It's just the two of us. But we're strong, aren't we?" Isabella nodded bravely. "We're the strongest." That night, Carmen made a decision. They would do more than survive. They would thrive. She wouldn't let Roberto's bad choices define Isabella's future. She would build something better, something lasting, something her daughter could be proud of. But first, they needed to disappear completely. The next day, Carmen went to court and began the legal process to change their names. Carmen Morales would become Carmen Rivera. Isabella Morales would become Isabella Rivera. They would move to a different apartment in a different part of the city. They would start completely from scratch. "Why are we changing our names, Mummy?" Isabella asked while filling out the paperwork. "Because sometimes, when we want a new life, we need new names too. It's like being born again. And we can be whoever we want to be. We can be exactly whoever we want to be." With their new names and new apartment in Kendall, Carmen, now Carmen Rivera, focused on building her new life. The cleaning work was becoming easier, but she knew it wasn't sustainable long-term. She needed something more, something better. It was during a conversation with Mrs. Henderson, one of her regular clients, that Carmen had an epiphany. "Carmen, dear," Mrs. Henderson said, "you're the best cleaning person we've ever had. You don't just clean. You care for the house as if it were your own." "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. Actually, I have some friends who are looking for someone reliable. Can I give them your information?" "Of course. But let me ask you a question. Have you ever thought about starting your own business, instead of working for Bob?" The idea hit Carmen like lightning. Her own business. Why not? She knew how to clean now. She knew the products, the techniques, how to deal with clients, and she was tired of Bob keeping 60% of what she earned. "Mrs. Henderson, is that possible?" "Dear, of course it's possible. You just need a few things. Business license, insurance, some clients to start. I can introduce you to 5 or 6 friends who would love a reliable person." That night, Carmen researched how to start a cleaning company in Florida. It was more complicated than she thought. There were licenses, insurance, taxes, marketing. But each obstacle seemed more like a challenge than an impediment. She used her 2-month savings, $1,200, to get a business license, basic insurance, and professional cleaning supplies. She created simple business cards: Rivera Cleaning Services, your home, our passion. With Mrs. Henderson's referrals, Carmen got 5 regular clients in her first week. Instead of earning $40 per house and giving $24 to Bob, now she earned $70 per house and kept everything minus costs. But starting her own business brought new challenges. Now she was responsible for everything: marketing, accounting, customer service, problem resolution. When a client complained, there was no Bob to resolve it. When equipment broke, she had to replace it with her own money. And there was the constant transportation problem. Taking buses between houses was limiting how many clients she could serve per day. It was Isabella who suggested the solution. "Mummy, why don't you buy a car?" "Because cars cost a lot of money, Princess." "But you could work more if you had a car, right? And earn more money." Isabella, at 8 years old, had developed an impressive understanding of basic economics through her experience. Carmen researched used cars and found a 1998 Honda Civic with 200,000 miles for $2,500. It was more money than she had, but the seller agreed to a payment plan. "It's a risk," she said to Isabella the night before signing the papers. "If we can't make the payments, we lose the car and all the money we've already paid. But without the car, you can't grow your business, right?" "Right. So we have to try." With the car, Carmen managed to double her number of clients. She was working 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, but now she was earning almost $2,000 a month, more than she had ever earned in Phoenix. But success brought new problems. Isabella was spending too much time alone after school. Carmen was constantly exhausted, and she knew she was missing precious moments of her daughter's childhood. The solution came from an unexpected source. Maria Santos, one of Carmen's clients, was a retired teacher who always chatted with Carmen while she worked. "Carmen, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, Mrs. Santos." "Does your daughter stay alone after school?" Carmen hesitated. She didn't want to admit that an 8-year-old was spending 3 hours alone every afternoon. "Sometimes," she said carefully. "Well, I'm retired and a bit bored. If you want, Isabella can come here after school. I can help her with homework, give her a snack. No cost. I would love the company." Carmen began to cry. "Mrs. Santos, I can't accept this for free. It's not free. It's community. It's what people do for each other. How can I repay you? Continue being the wonderful person you are, and maybe, when Isabella grows up, she'll help someone who needs it." This arrangement changed everything. Isabella now had a safe place to stay, help with homework, and a loving grandmother figure. Carmen could work with peace of mind, knowing her daughter was well cared for. 6 months later, Rivera Cleaning Services had 15 regular clients and a waiting list. Carmen had hired 2 other women, Maria from the shelter and Ana, the 50-year-old Cuban. They worked as a team, supporting each other. "Carmen," Ana said one day while they cleaned a mansion in Pinecrest, "you changed our lives." "How so?" "You gave us more than work. You gave us dignity. You treated us as partners, not employees." "Because you are partners. Without you, I couldn't serve all these clients. But you could have hired anyone. You chose women like us, women who were struggling." Carmen stopped cleaning and looked at Ana. "Ana, do you know why I chose you?" "Why?" "Because women who survived what we survived have a strength that can't be taught. You understand the value of honest work. You understand what it means to fight for your children, and that makes us better employees. That makes you family." 1 year after arriving in Miami, Carmen was sitting in her small apartment, helping Isabella with math homework, when she noticed something extraordinary. Isabella was solving problems that Carmen found difficult. Her 8-year-old daughter hadn't just adapted to the changes in her life, she had thrived. "Isabella, were you always so good at math?" "I don't know. Mrs. Santos says I have a gift for numbers." "A gift?" "She says when I grow up, I can be an engineer or scientist or anything I want." Carmen looked at her daughter, this resilient girl who had lost her home, her father, her stability, but had emerged stronger and more determined. "Isabella, can I ask you a question?" "Of course, Mummy. Do you remember our big house in Phoenix? A little Do you miss it? Isabella thought carefully before answering. Sometimes I miss my big room, but I don't miss how sad you were all the time. Carmen was startled. I was sad. Very sad. You didn't laugh. You didn't play with me. You were always worried. And now? Now you laugh again, and you're proud of what you do. And I'm proud of you too. Carmen hugged Isabella, realizing her daughter had seen things she herself hadn't noticed. In Phoenix, she had been miserable in her seemingly perfect life. Here, struggling and building something of her own, she had found real happiness. 2 years after her arrival, Carmen faced her biggest challenge yet. Mrs. Henderson called in panic. "Carmen, dear, I have to cancel your service." "What? Why? Did I do something wrong?" No, you're perfect. But my husband lost his job and we can no longer afford cleaning." In 1 week, Carmen lost 4 clients due to the economic recession that hit Miami. Her income dropped by half overnight. "What are we going to do?" Anna asked, worried about her own livelihood. "We're going to adapt," Carmen responded, but internally she was panicking. It was Isabella who suggested the solution that would save the business. "Yeah, Mommy, why don't you offer other services besides cleaning?" "What kind of services?" "Mrs. Santos always complains that she can't organize her closets, and Mrs. Rodriguez at school said she needs someone to take care of her plants when she travels." Carmen looked at her 9-year-old daughter with admiration. "Isabella, you're a genius. I learned from you." Carmen expanded Rivera Cleaning Services to Rivera Home Services. Now they offered cleaning, organization, plant care, small home repairs, and even basic meal preparation. The diversification not only compensated for lost clients, it attracted new clients who needed various services. 3 years after arriving in Miami, Carmen was driving home after a day of work when she noticed she had passed the old bus station where she had arrived. She stopped the car and looked at the building. 3 years ago, she had gotten off that bus with $147 and absolute terror. Now she was driving her own car, owned a thriving business, and had $15,000 saved for Isabella's future. More importantly, she had become a different person, not the frightened victim who had fled Phoenix, but a strong woman who had built a new life with her own hands. That night, during dinner, Isabella asked a question that surprised Carmen. "Mommy, are you still angry at Daddy?" Carmen considered the question carefully. "Why do you ask?" "Because sometimes I get angry at him for making us go through all this. But other times I think that if he hadn't done those bad things, we never would have come here." "And do you like it here?" "I love it here. I love our life. I love seeing you happy." Carmen took a deep breath. "Isabella, I'm not angry at your father anymore. I'm sad about the choices he made. I'm sad that he died, but I'm not angry." "Why?" "Because anger is like carrying a heavy stone. It only hurts the one carrying it. And because I realized that sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us to the best things we could have." Isabella nodded with the wisdom of someone much older than her 9 years. "Is it like in the Bible?" "How so?" "Mrs. Santos taught me a verse. We know that God works in all things for the good of those who love him. Does that mean that even when bad things happen, God can turn them into good things?" Carmen felt tears forming in her eyes. Her 9-year-old daughter had articulated something she was just beginning to understand. "Yes, mi amor, it means exactly that." So maybe God had a plan for us from the beginning. Maybe he did. 4 years after her arrival, Carmen faced a decision that would test everything she had built. Roberto Silva, a local real estate developer, offered to buy Rivera Home Services for $75,000. "It's a generous offer," he explained during a meeting in his elegant office. "You've built a solid reputation, have loyal clients, established systems. I can expand the business using my resources and connections." Carmen looked at the contract on the table. $75,000 was more money than she had ever imagined having. "What about my team?" she asked. "Well, I'd probably have to make some cuts. Optimize operations." "Cuts means firing Maria and Anna." "Possibly. It would depend on operational needs." Carmen looked through the office window at the view of Biscayne Bay. It was beautiful, but cold. Very different from the view from her small apartment, where she could see Isabella playing in the courtyard with other children. "I need to think about it," she said. "Of course, but don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't always come along." That night, Carmen talked with Isabella about the offer. "Is $75,000 a lot of money?" Isabella asked. "It's more money than I ever dreamed of having." "So why don't you seem happy?" Carmen sighed. "Because I'm not sure selling is the right thing to do." "Why not?" "Because Maria and Anna would lose their jobs. Because our clients might not receive the same care. Because, well, this business is more than money to me. It's proof that I can build something with my own hands." Isabella thought for a moment. "Mami, remember when you told me that sometimes the bravest thing is to say no?" "I remember. Maybe this is one of those times." The next morning, Carmen called Roberto Silva. "Mr. Silva, thank you for the offer, but I'm not going to sell." "Are you sure it's a lot of money?" "I'm sure. This business isn't just about money. It's about community, about giving opportunities to other women, about building something lasting." "You're making a mistake. You may never have another opportunity like this. Then I'll create my own opportunities." After hanging up the phone, Carmen felt deep peace. She had chosen value over money, community over convenience. 5 years after her arrival in Miami, Carmen was on the stage of the Kendall Community Center, receiving the Entrepreneur of the Year award from the Latino Chamber of Commerce. "Rivera Home Services," said the presenter, "began as one woman with a broom and a dream. Today it employs 12 people, serves over 100 clients, and has become a model of how businesses can serve both profit and purpose." Carmen looked at the audience and saw Maria and Anna in the front row, applauding proudly. She saw Mrs. Henderson and Mrs. Santos, her first advocates. She saw Isabella, now 12 years old, sitting with a radiant smile on her face. 5 years ago," Carmen began her acceptance speech, "I arrived in Miami with $147 and a 7-year-old daughter. I had no plan, no connections, nothing but desperation and determination." She paused, looking at Isabella. "Today, I'm not rich in the traditional sense, but I'm rich in purpose, rich in community, rich in hope. When I started cleaning houses, some people looked at me with pity. 'What a shame,' they whispered, 'an intelligent woman reduced to domestic work.' But they didn't understand. I hadn't been reduced to anything. I had been elevated." The audience was completely silent, because honest work, whatever it is, has dignity. Because building something with your own hands has value that can't be measured in dollars. Because serving others is the highest form of success. Carmen turned to her employees in the audience. "This award isn't mine. It's ours. It belongs to Maria, who works 3 jobs to support 4 children but still finds energy to bring joy to every house we clean. It belongs to Anna, who started over at 50 and proved it's never too late to thrive. It belongs to Mrs. Santos, who cared for my daughter when I couldn't. It belongs to Mrs. Henderson, who gave me my first referral and believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Her voice rose with emotion. "And it especially belongs to my daughter Isabella, who taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right even when you're terrified." Carmen looked directly at Isabella. "My daughter saw me start from zero and build something new. I hope when she faces her own challenges in life, she'll remember that it's always possible to start over, always possible to build something better than what you lost." The auditorium exploded in applause that lasted 5 minutes. After the ceremony, Carmen was approached by dozens of people, other Latina businesswomen wanting advice, young mothers asking for guidance, even representatives from national organizations interested in studying her business model. But the conversation that most touched her heart was with a young woman named Sophia. "Mrs. Rivera," Sophia said nervously, "I just got divorced. I have 2 small children and don't know where to start." Carmen saw herself 5 years ago in this young woman's face. "Sophia, what's your biggest fear?" "That I won't be able to take care of my children. That they'll grow up thinking their mother is a failure. Can I tell you a secret? Please. Failure isn't in falling down, it's in staying down. If you're willing to get up, to work, to rebuild, you're not a failure. You're a warrior." But how do I do it? How do I start? Carmen took a business card and wrote her personal number on the back. Call me Monday. I need one more person on the team, and maybe you need a job. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. And sometimes honest work is exactly what we need to rebuild our dignity. Sophia began to cry. Thank you so much. Sophia, promise me something. Anything. Promise that when you're stable again, you'll help the next woman who's where you are now. I promise. A week later, Sophia started working for Rivera Home Services. Like Carmen had done 5 years before, she was clumsy at first, insecure, frequently on the verge of tears. But Maria and Anna welcomed her, taught her, supported her through the difficult days. It's like a family, Sophia said to Carmen after her first month. That's exactly what it is, Carmen replied. A family of women who refuse to be defeated. 6 months later, Sophia had stabilized financially, found an apartment for her and her children, and was thriving. She became one of the company's most dedicated employees. Carmen, Sophia said one day while they organized the cleaning supply inventory, can I ask you a question? Of course. Why do you do this? Why do you help women like me? You could hire more experienced, more qualified people. Carmen stopped what she was doing and looked at Sophia. Because someone helped me when I needed it. And because I believe that when women support each other, there's no limit to what we can achieve. But it's not just about business for you, is it? No, it's about purpose. It's about transforming pain into power. It's about showing that no matter how deep you fall, you can always rise again. And how did you know I would succeed? Carmen smiled. Because I saw the same determination in your eyes that I felt in my heart when I arrived here with $147. I recognized a survivor. 7 years after her arrival in Miami, Carmen faced her biggest test yet. Isabella, now 14 years old and one of the best students at her school, received an offer for a full scholarship to an elite preparatory school in Orlando. It's an incredible opportunity, said the educational counselor. Aunt Isabella has potential for Harvard, MIT, any university she chooses, but she needs the preparation that only a school like Westfield Academy can offer. Carmen looked at the school brochures, beautiful campus, state-of-the-art facilities, 98% university acceptance rate. What's the catch? She asked, suspecting there was one. Well, Isabella would have to live on campus. It's a boarding program. Carmen felt her world stop. Tied for how long? 4 years. From freshman to senior year of high school. Carmen looked at Isabella, who was clearly torn between the opportunity and leaving her mother. Mommy, Isabella said that night, I don't have to go. I can get a good education here. Isabella, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. But you would be alone, and I don't want to leave you. Carmen hugged her daughter, this extraordinary young woman who had grown up too fast but remained incredibly loyal. Isabella, remember when we arrived here and you asked if we could be whoever we wanted to be? I remember. I wanted you to be free to dream big, to reach for anything. This school can give you tools I could never give you. But what about you? I would be fine. I have my business, I have my friends, I have purpose, and I would know I'm giving you the best chance possible. Are you sure? Carmen took a deep breath, fighting against every maternal instinct, screaming not to let her daughter go. I'm sure. 2 weeks later, Carmen was helping Isabella pack for Westfield Academy. It was one of the hardest days of her life, seeing her daughter, her companion through everything, preparing to leave the nest they had built together. Mommy, Isabella said while carefully folding her clothes. Thank you. For what? For giving me roots strong enough to fly. Carmen began to cry. Isabella, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. Everything I did, everything I built was for you. I know, and I'm going to make you proud. You already make me proud every day. On the day Isabella left for Orlando, Carmen felt lonelier than she had felt since they arrived in Miami. For the first time in 7 years, she was truly alone. But instead of sinking into sadness, she channeled her energy into expanding Rivera Home Services. She opened a second branch in Fort Lauderdale, then a third in West Palm Beach. She developed training programs for other women wanting to start their own cleaning businesses. Carmen is becoming a force of nature, Anna commented to Maria while they worked. She always was, Maria replied. Yes, it's just that now she has all this maternal energy with nowhere to go, so she's mothering all of us and half the world. It was true. Carmen had become a mentor to dozens of women entrepreneurs, unofficial counselor to struggling single mothers, and advocate for policies supporting small businesses. 2 years later, when Isabella was a sophomore at Westfield, she called Carmen with exciting news. "Hi, Mommy, guess what? What, mi amor? I was accepted into MIT's summer engineering program. Of 1,000 applicants, only 50 were chosen." Carmen screamed with joy, dancing alone in her kitchen. "Isabella, I'm so proud. When do you find out?" "Actually, there's more. They offered a full scholarship for the 4-year program. If I do well in the summer, I can go to MIT with everything paid." Carmen sat heavily in her chair, emotion overwhelming her. Her daughter, the girl who had arrived in Miami scared and traumatized, was headed to one of the best universities in the world. "Mummy, are you there?" "I'm here, Princess. I'm just remembering when you were 7 years old and asked me if we could be whoever we wanted to be. And you said yes. And I was right." The summer between Isabella's sophomore and junior years at Westfield, she came home to work as an intern at Rivera Home Services. "Mommy," she said on the first day, "I want to learn about business from the ground up." "Isabella, you don't have to clean houses. You can work in the office, in accounting." "No, I want to understand every aspect of what you built." For 3 months, Isabella worked side by side with Maria, Anna, Sophia, and the other women. She cleaned bathrooms, vacuumed carpets, organized closets, and she learned. "Isabella," Sophia said one day, "why are you doing this?" "You're going to MIT. You could have any internship at any company." "Because I want to understand where I come from. I want to understand what my mother built and why. And what have you learned?" Isabella stopped folding towels and looked at Sophia. "I learned that my mother isn't just in the house cleaning business. She's in the business of transforming lives, including mine." At the end of summer, Isabella presented Carmen with a detailed business plan to expand Rivera Home Services nationally. "Isabella, this is incredible, but you're going to MIT to study engineering." "I am, but that doesn't mean I can't help expand the family business. In fact, I want to apply engineering principles to make our operations more efficient." Carmen looked at her daughter, this brilliant young woman who could work anywhere, do anything, but chose to honor and expand what they had built together. "Isabella, are you sure? There are so many opportunities in the world for you." "Mommy, you don't understand. This is my opportunity. You gave me something more valuable than money or status. You gave me an example of how to build something meaningful from nothing. And you want to continue this. I want to expand it. Imagine if we could have Rivera Home Services franchises in 50 cities. Imagine how many women we could help find dignity and financial independence." Carmen began to cry. "Isabella, you've grown so much. I grew up watching the strongest woman in the world rebuild her life brick by brick. Now I want to help build an empire the same way." 10 years after her arrival in Miami, Carmen was on stage at the National Small Business Convention, giving the keynote speech to 3,000 entrepreneurs. 10 years ago, she began, "I arrived in a strange city with a small daughter. Almost no money and no prospects beyond despair." The audience was completely silent. Today, Rivera Home Services operates in 15 cities, employs more than 200 women, and generated $2 million in revenue last year. Applause echoed throughout the auditorium, but those numbers don't tell the real story. The real story is in the 200 women who found dignity and independence. It's in the 500 children who now have financially stable mothers. Carmen paused, finding Isabella in the audience, now a 17-year-old about to start at MIT. The real story is in a 7-year-old girl who saw her mother lose everything and rebuild everything, and learned that there's no limit to what's possible when you refuse to give up. I want to leave you with a truth I learned through blood, sweat, and tears. You always have more power than you think. You always have more options than you see. You always have more strength than you know. Her voice rose with passion. No matter where you are now, no matter what you've lost, no matter how impossible it seems, you can rebuild, you can grow, you can thrive. And when you thrive, reach out to the next person who is where you once were, because that's how we transform individual tragedies into collective triumphs. The auditorium rose in an ovation that lasted 8 minutes. After the speech, Carmen was approached by a young businesswoman named Patricia. "Mrs. Rivera, your story touched me deeply. I'm the daughter of immigrants, and I've always felt ashamed of my parents' humble work. And now? Now I understand there's no such thing as humble work, only humble attitudes. My parents gave me everything by working with their hands, and that's something to be proud of, not ashamed of." "Exactly. And what's your dream now?" "I want to start a company that connects immigrant workers with families who need domestic services, to dignify the work that people like your parents do." Carmen smiled. "Patricia, you just articulated the future of service work, and when you start, call me. I can help you with everything I've learned." "Really? Really?" "Because that's how we build a better world, one businesswoman helping the next." 2 years later, Patricia had launched Connect Home, a platform that revolutionized how domestic services were contracted and provided. And Carmen was there at the opening, as mentor and investor. "Carmen," Patricia said during the launch ceremony, "you changed not just my perspective, but potentially thousands of lives through what you taught me." "Patricia, you did the work. I just shared what I learned. And that's what makes you a true leader." 12 years after her arrival in Miami, Carmen received a call that would change everything once again. "Mami," Isabella said, her voice full of emotion, "I have news, good or bad, incredible. I just graduated as valedictorian of my class at MIT, and I received offers from 5 different companies with 6-figure salaries." Carmen screamed with joy. "Isabella, I'm so proud." "But there's more. I also received an offer to pursue a PhD at Stanford with a full scholarship." "My God, Isabella, this is—" "And I turned them all down." Carmen stopped. "What?" "I turned everything down, Mummy. Because I want to come home and work with you. Isabella, you can't do this. These are once-in-a-lifetime opportunities." "No, Mummy, you are the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Rivera Home Services is where I can make the biggest difference. But you could earn so much more money, have so much more prestige. Mommy, do you remember what you taught me when I was 7 years old, that we could be whoever we wanted to be? I remember. I want to be like you. I want to build something that changes lives. I want to use my education to expand your vision globally." Carmen began to cry. "Isabella, are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." A month later, Isabella returned home with an MIT degree and a 5-year plan to transform Rivera Home Services into an international company. "Mommy," she said while presenting her plan, "imagine if we could expand to Mexico, Central America, even Asia. Imagine how many women we could help find dignity and independence." Carmen looked at her daughter, this brilliant young woman who could be working at NASA or Google, but chose to work with brooms and mops, and felt a pride beyond words. "Isabella, do you really want to spend your life cleaning houses?" "No, Mummy. I want to spend my life building a movement that shows honest work has dignity, that women can support each other, that it's possible to transform necessity into opportunity." "And you think we can do this?" Isabella took her mother's hand, exactly as she had done on that bus 12 years ago. "Mummy, you taught me that 2 women with determination can conquer anything. Now we're 2 women with determination and an MIT degree. Imagine what we can do." Carmen laughed through her tears. "Isabella Rivera, you're going to change the world. We're going to change the world, Mummy, together, like we always have." 15 years after arriving in Miami with $147, Carmen stood on the terrace of her new corporate office, looking out at the city that had become her home. Rivera Global Services now operated in 43 cities in 8 countries, employed more than 1,000 women, and had become a case study in business schools. But what made Carmen proudest weren't the numbers. It was knowing that each of those 1,000 women had found dignity, purpose, and independence through honest work. Isabella joined her on the terrace, now executive vice president of the company at 22 years old. "What are you thinking about, Mommy? About how we got here, about everything we lost and everything we gained. Do you regret anything?" Carmen thought about the question. "I don't regret leaving Phoenix. I don't regret starting by cleaning houses. I don't regret any difficult decision we made. Not even sending me to Westfield? Especially not that. Because that's what gave you the tools to expand our vision beyond what I could have imagined." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the sun set over Miami. "Isabella," Carmen said finally, "do you remember the verse that Mrs. Santos taught you when you were little? We know that God works all things together for good for those who love him. Do you believe it now?" Isabella looked at her mother, this extraordinary woman who had transformed despair into hope, poverty into prosperity, pain into purpose. "I believe it completely, Mummy, because I've lived it, because you showed me it's possible." Carmen hugged her daughter, knowing they had completed a journey that began in terror and ended in triumph. "Do you know what the best part of all this is?" Carmen asked. "What?" "That our story will inspire other women to believe they can also rebuild their lives, that honest work has dignity, that it's never too late to start over, and that mothers and daughters can be partners in building something extraordinary." Exactly. As the city lights came on below them, Carmen and Isabella remained on the terrace, planning the next phase of their journey together. From desperate refugees to business leaders, from victims to victors, they had proven that with faith, hard work, and mutual support, any dream is possible. And in Rivera Global Services offices around the world, other women were writing their own transformation stories, inspired by the example of a mother and daughter who refused to be defined by their circumstances and chose, instead, to define their own circumstances. Because sometimes, the most extraordinary journeys begin with a one-way ticket and $147, and they end by changing the world.